So I'm gonna do it. So Jan, I'm sitting here with Jan Robinson Flint, who is the founder for Black Women for Wellness. Jan, can you just tell me a little bit more? Give me the background, the history that you were telling me, how reproductive justice movement.
Where the term and the movement came from.
Yeah, could you?
So, and then that's what it was a UN conference for women in Cairo, where the next conference after that, between the UN conferences on women, were happening every 5 years at that point in time, and then they decided to put one in the middle, still meeting on the African continent, where it was the conversation was about population, and the black women who were attending were like, y'all not talking about us, or you are not talking about black women. And it wasn't women of color, it really was black women at that point in time, because the thought was they were trying to control black women's fertility and not include black women in the conversation. Because every time they started talking about population control, it was one to control the fertility of black women, as opposed to how to help black women have healthier pregnancies and outcomes in babies and stuff like that. So then I'm going to say it was about 20 women. Actually, Tony Bond Leonard was one of the women, and she's here in Southern California. Met in Chicago and came up with the concept of reproductive justice. And then they convinced 200 other black women to take a full page ad out in the New York Times, where they said, we stand for reproductive justice. And that's how that movement was born. Women of color then joined it, in terms of Latino women and Asian women and indigenous women. But it really was black women in Chicago after that UN conference who said, okay, how do we include ourselves in these conversations?
And can you tell me a little bit about, you said BWW was founded around that time too?
So what I'm saying is that a lot of times things are happening simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, I don't know, because revolution is in the air, or that energy is in the air. Because while they were having that meeting in Chicago talking about reproductive justice, then we were having conversations on the West Coast, but we were talking about more birthing justice, more talking about the birthing project and the Underground Railway to New Life, working with Catherine Hall and saying, how do we help black women and our babies survive childbirth, right? And what are we going to do about infant mortality? So that's what we were talking about, because we were looking at babies dying, literally babies dying, because the infant mortality was like 3 or 4 times that of everybody else. And that's where our thought came from. But it was really the same thing, right? Because we were talking about how do we help and support black women to survive childbirth and their babies to survive the first year of life, which was really talking about how to have a baby and that type of thing. Whereas the black women in Chicago knew that the white women at those international conferences, that wasn't their conversation. Their conversation was, how do we control their fertility? How do we get them to stop having so many babies? It wasn't about how do we save their lives.
So why do we, speeding up, I don't know how many years, 30, 40 years down the line, why do I still see reports that black women still have high infant mortality rates?
And high maternal mortality rates?
Yes.
Okay. So I used to work for the March of Dimes.
Yes,
right?
Now I know.
Okay. So at the March of Dimes, one of the things that I thought was interesting is they fund a great deal of research around infant mortality, around prematurity, and what keeps babies alive. So I'm going to say 40 years ago or 30 years ago, or maybe even 20 years ago, if a baby was born weighing 3 pounds, that baby was dead, right? That baby wouldn't survive. But now they have enough medical technology to keep a low birth weight baby alive, right? So what I'm saying is medical technology has improved to the point where they can keep babies alive. But medical care, medical service delivery still is seeped in racism. So it still impacts the fact that we have um, challenged birth outcomes and challenged pregnancies, right? Because you have to deal with that stress of being black in America. You have to deal with all the micro and macro aggressions during your pregnancy and in the hospital. If you want to go back to recall, um, just recently when Serena Williams had her baby, she had to save her own life.
I remember reading about that. She had to tell the doctors, right?
Right, right, because they didn't want to listen to her, right? So, and that's what I'm saying, that the medical care and service delivery is still racist. It's still biased. And it doesn't matter how much money you got, your Rolls Royce medical insurance, because it's based on race. So as long as we don't shift the culture, as long as we don't shift the racism, then we're still going to have more adverse outcomes because that has an impact on your health and well-being.
Thank you.